Hey everybody, welcome to Hell in a Box of Tissues. Why tissues? Well, this playthrough caused every single one of my tear ducts to combust, resulting in the flooding of my living room. Just kidding. Kinda. Let me start over. You may have seen many subclass playthroughs of Terraria, like True Melee, Boomerangs, Flails, and probably others. But today I am playing the most overlooked subclass of all time, bows. People may not play this because it makes bosses too easy thanks to the range, or perhaps it's due to bats being harder to hit than finding a needle in a haystack that is the size of the Pacific Ocean. Nevertheless, I thought this would be a good idea. The run started out with some good old deforestation, followed by me hitting up my local desert for some armor. After a while, I decided to go home since I didn't have arrows, and from there, I started digging down. This, of course, is where I found a glowing mushroom biome containing absolutely nothing. And then made it to hell, but decided to leave because I wasn't ready. So I decided to go exploring through the world. Now, if you've seen previous videos, specifically the hardcore one, you may know that I had some interesting experiences with these big trees, including the one going halfway down the world and having 2 houses stuck inside of it. Well, I think this one tops it. The 4th tree in this area of trees, not only was there a house inside of the tree, but there was a minecart going through the tree, and then the tree kept going down. After that, and as you will learn in the future, this minecart led to a granite cave that was attached to a beehive. Now that is some crazy terrain generation. On the other side of the minecart, there was another glowing mushroom biome, which, as I'm sure you can guess, also had absolutely nothing in it. At this point in the playthrough, I was finding myself very unlucky, and was running behind on a lot of things that I usually do earlier in the game. So I decided to move on to Skeletron, and when I say this fight was easy, I mean this fight was easy. I had him killed in less than 5 minutes, and without any health struggles, unlike when I usually play melee. Next up was the Goblin Army, and unlike Skeletron, these guys absolutely sucked. At this point in the playthrough, I was still very bad at aiming, and so these tiny targets were not helping at all. Which is why I essentially gave up, and went down into the caves. I'm kidding. The reason I went down into the caves was so that I could grab a lava bucket, hopefully to make things a little easier. And as you may know and love, the popular structures called pyramid lava structures that are used to AFK, I didn't exactly have time to build one, but that was the idea I was going for. So I built this little piece of garbage, and after what felt like an eternity, I finally survived the Goblin Army. After the Goblin Army was over, I decided to immediately go try the Eater of Worlds. But as I would soon find out, this would be my first challenging boss of the playthrough, and I died. The easiest way I could think of to actually kill this boss was getting a few upgrades, so I immediately went and tried to kill Queen Bee. The reason I wanted to do this was obviously for the bee's knees, which is a bow that drops from Queen Bee that summons little tiny bees to go kill your enemies. And speaking of bees, the bees that naturally spawn from the hive absolutely suck. I thought the goblins were hard to hit. I thought that bats were hard to hit. But these guys, coming in swarms of 5 or 6, being the tiniest little things I've seen in the world, they were impossible to hit. But eventually I was able to lure Queen Bee out of her little hive, and with a few health struggles, I defeated her. And guess what? I did not get the bee's knees. Immediately after, I went home, and a slime rain began. And I used my totally epic, totally not flawed at all, lava trap. And then once King Slime eventually spawned, I took him out by distancing myself and shooting him, which took forever. But then his death reminded me of something that I'd overlooked, and that was the ninja gear. The ninja gear had the exact same total defense that I had, however it had a set bonus of increased speed, which was obviously very useful. So I went down to the mines to get summons, and then after a few extra kills on King Slime, I had the full set, and I was faster than ever. Which is why I decided to go back to the Eater of Worlds, and this time everything was going great, until I tried to see exactly how many shadow scales I could collect, and fell down a hole, got stuck, and died. But I knew, if I had just stayed on the upper platform, it would be possible. But just as I was about to beat him again, the Eye of Cthulhu spawned, the first boss of the entire game, and it took 5 hours. But as I was already prepared past that point, he was very easy, obviously. After that was over, I went back to the Eater of Worlds, and beat him, which meant that it was finally time to go back to Queen Bee and try to get what I needed, the bow. On my first reattempt of Queen Bee, I got the bow, which meant that it was time for Wall of Flesh. And let me tell you, everything I worked for was completely worth it, because this was the easiest Wall of Flesh fight I have seen in ages. His health was rapidly going down the whole time. I was barely taking any damage, and before I knew it, he was dead. With it now being hard mode, it was time to go break some altars. One thing that I had recently discovered in some of my quality of life mods was a complete altar breaker that destroyed every single altar in the world. So I used it, and the results were pretty insane. First of all, I got titanium, which is literally the best hard mode ore ever to be created, just because of the bonus. But also, look at this army of wraiths. This is absolutely insane. Or at least I wish I could call them my army. They were kind of a threat. This is when I realized something very bad. There was absolutely no early hard mode progression into bows. But after a quick Google search and a nice long talk with my brother, I discovered that my only other option, which was repeaters, were not considered bows, despite them using arrows, which made them a no. However, there was one other bow that I did not know about that I could get in early hard mode, and that was the Shadow Flame bow. This was of course dropped by the tier 2 goblin army, so I immediately went on and summoned it, but after no luck, I summoned it again, and then I finally got it, which meant that I could move on to more important matters, like the Hollowed Mimic. This was of course so that I could easily get the Daedalus Stormbow. And after 7 freaking kills, I finally got the bow. But my luck did not get any better, because from there, I went right after to trying to get wings, and I sat at the top of a rope for 10 minutes waiting for a wyvern to spawn. But then I was finally able to get wings. Having all possible upgrades, it was time to take on the twin. Yeah, let's not talk about that. It was time to take on the twins, and then the Destroyer, and finally Skeletron Prime. Continuing my epic gamer speedrun streak, I did Plantera, and immediately continued taking on Golem. Immediately. This is when I found out that only about half of his arena was deep enough for me to use my Stormbow, which meant that I was completely limited to using my Shadow Flame bow. This still didn't go too bad, however, because I beat him easily. Very easily. Next, I headed to the ocean, because legend has it if you throw a truffle worm that has exactly 666 bait power, a giant green fish will appear. And although many are not powerful enough to beat him, one true warrior could go in, destroy him, and get a bow rumored to be called the Tsunami. Clearly that legend was not me, and that's where my luck streak ended, because soon after I tried to take on the cultist, and also lost. Now if you look at the title of this video, the title is, Can I Beat Terraria with Only Bows? And I think I have an answer. The answer is no. There were no further upgrades that I could possibly get. I couldn't even get the cultist to under half health, and there was no way I was beating Duke Fishron. It was over. Is what a loser would say. I immediately upgraded to my final set of armor, the Shroomite armor, and then went down to the dungeon to collect the Tabby and Black Belt. This was to combine with the climbing gear that I had had since the very beginning of the game, giving me Master Ninja Gear. With this, not only could I dodge attacks, but I could also dash out of Duke Fishron's way, making this fight possibly easier. And it was, because I killed him twice, and still didn't get the bow, but that's not the point. I moved on to the cultist, and while I was losing health, I was also gaining health faster than I was losing it. At low parts, I was able to make it high, until finally, the cultist was at 7,000 health, then 3,000 health, and then, well, I'll just have the situation play itself out. That recall was completely accidental. So, you know what I did next? I shoved my emotions and all my recall potions as deep into my inventory as possible to never be seen again, and I did it again. 7,000 health, 3,000 health, until finally, the tradition of the solar pillar spawning right on our heads as I killed the cultist continued. But I wasn't there yet. I went home and killed the vortex pillar. This granted me my final bow of the game, the Phantasm. And let me tell you, it puts out more DPS than anything I've seen since the Zenith. With all my possible upgrades and complete with a 3,000 damage per second bow, I did Duke Fishron 9 times, and guess what happened? I didn't get the freaking bow! However, it was very late at night and I was too tired to do them again. So I figured I would just move on to Moonlord. The first thing I did was some home upgrades. I made an asphalt road and put a nurse box with my spawn point at one end of it, and then killed the 3 other pillars. It was time. I sat there and waited for the silent minute that impending doom was approaching. Until finally, with my heart racing faster than ever, he spawned. And let me tell you, the near heart attack I had was completely pointless because I was barely taking damage, and within 3 minutes this man was destroyed once and for all. Which means that the answer to the burning question you all have, can you beat Terraria with only bows? The answer is yes, you can.